5:30. Let's call the meeting to order. And are we on? Sorry. Okay. Can we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, purpose of the meeting is for the board to conduct board business. Meeting is open to the public and is recorded. You can listen to all past board meetings by visiting board docs through our district website. This meeting is being presented via Zoom. Not just a reminder, it's not appropriate for audience members to interrupt board business or ask questions during the meeting. Agenda items will be listed in the agenda, and in case of emergency, please find the exit closest to you. And Director Rocco, would you share our vision and mission statements?
Sure. Our vision is our community inspires and prepares each student to thrive. Our mission is in connection with our community. The Sequim School District empowers staff to inspire hope and provide flexible, innovative learning opportunities in a safe and respectful environment so each student thrives.
Thank you. Pat, would you care to share our land acknowledgement?
Sure. We acknowledge the land we stand on. The Sequim School District administrative and school buildings sit on the ancestral land of the S'Klallam people. While the S'Klallam traditionally come from one nation, history has led to the formation of three sovereign S'Klallam tribal governments. Lower Elwha S'Klallam tribe located in Port Angeles, Washington, Jamestown S'Klallam tribe located in Sequim, Washington, Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe located in Kingston, Washington. The district's primary partnership is with the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe. Today, the tribe and district share a partnership that includes official consultation on program and funding changes that may directly affect American Indian and Alaska Native students, as well as holistic service planning for students to remain successful in their educational journeys.
Thank you. All right, and that's going to bring us to 2.01. We have our, sure, we're going to pause for just a moment. Okay. So, We can come back to it. Don't come back to it? No. We are still waiting for a couple of guests, regarding 2.01. So if there's no objection, we can come back to that portion of the agenda. Okay. And so with that, why don't we do the approval on our October 21st regular meeting minutes, our current agenda, and our consent agenda. Is there any objection to the approval of those three items? Hearing none, we'll consider those approved. That's going to bring us to the public comment portion of the meeting. And we just see if we have anybody that has signed up before I read the normal spiel. And if you are attending the meeting via Zoom, you can indicate your request to make public comment by using the raise hand feature, which should be located at the bottom of the screen. So if that is you, please go ahead and do that now. Okay. No, I just said it, so. Okay. Okay. So we have no request for public comment, so I'll go ahead and skip past reading that portion as I always do. And I'll go to our student board representatives. Welcome.
Hello. Okay.
I think so.
Good evening, Sequim High School board members. The last 2 weeks, the high school has had its pre-SAT testing, which I think went really well. There were no technical issues, thankfully, during that. So I'd say that was a pretty good success. Monday and Tuesday, the fifth grade students over at Helen Haller had their Nature Bridge camp trip. They also had high school students from the high school leadership class come chaperone. From what I saw, the trip went very well. The students got to see, they got to learn a lot through very interactive experiences, and I'd say it was a very good trip. And the students really enjoyed it. Wednesday and Thursday of that week as well, we had our parent-teacher conferences going on, and that Friday was a teacher learning day. So that gave the high school student and I think the rest of the district, if I'm not mistaken, Wednesday through Friday off for students. And that is all I have to report.
All right. Thank you. And I especially want to call out and thank you for reporting on some of the activities, like talking about fifth grade as well, because I think it's just important for our student reps to also consider not just activities at the high school, but across all schools. So I'm glad you had that information.
I'm going to plan on reaching out to the other schools and seeing if they have anything to
Awesome.
say from now
Yeah,
on.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, and let's see. That's going to bring us to our reports to the board. And we're going to start with our annual choice report, I believe, with Jennifer Cox. Welcome.
I am in charge of choice transfers for the district. And these are effective as of November. There are 133 students that are choosing to go out of our district. You can see the numbers from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. You've got 22-23 school year of 164. 23-24 of 134 total, and 24-25 of 133. And then there are 85 students that are requesting to come to the Sequim School District. There were 80 last year, 74 the year before, and 85 this year. There are a multitude of reasons why a student would choose to go to a different district. Obviously the number one is to enroll in an online program. That is one of the biggest reasons that students, and I feel like COVID kind of pushed parents who might have been on the edge of online learning and gave them the opportunity to seek that. Through DVS, we're trying to regain some of those students back. One of the nice things about having an online school that is here, and I've talked to multiple families, and it's a personal contact. There's a lot of students that have a great idea, or they have the idea that online is better. And sometimes that's not necessarily the case, but having our own online program helps because they can come in and they can work with some of the teachers. So we're trying to regain some of our students that are choosing the online option through DVS. A lot of different districts that our students are choosing to come from and to go to. We typically, at the moment, we have Port Angeles is one of the districts that students are choosing to come to us from, Chimacum, and those are really the top two. But as you can see, there's a lot of online schools that students will choice out of. And that's it. Any questions at all?
Question?
Yeah, I have a question. When students, when they opt out for academic programs that we don't offer, do we get a sense of what those programs are?
I think a lot of the, because we do offer quite a few academic programs. I don't know that we've ever made contact. I personally have not made contact with them to find out what those academic programs. I know that there is some online programs that have even ours with DVS.
Mhm.
The classes that they can take there are so many choices. And I feel like that is one of the reasons why they choose an online program. You can take so many different classes that we as a school district can't offer.
Yeah, 'cause
So
it's not anchored to a classroom, et cetera.
yeah.
Right.
So
Sometimes we don't necessarily, I guess, have that opportunity to, if somebody is transferring out, we don't necessarily have the opportunity to educate them about DVS because it kind of happens quickly.
Yeah.
Is that the case? Is
that
there a
is
way to get in
always the
front of it
case.
to educate folks?
Yeah.
Or-
And there is nothing that says that we can't. And when I was in PA, one of the things that they tried to do with their online program was to bring back, and I would have conversations. I took it, I was given direction to call these parents and just say, hey, there are great online programs and your student is a part of one, but just want to let you know that we have a new program that's out there that we are establishing, and this is why we think it's great.
Yeah.
So I think that is helpful. I think that any contact we can make with people and make them aware of DVS, whether they come and visit it or anything, would be helpful.
And when they're enrolled with DVS versus one of the other online schools, they are then a student within our district, meaning they can participate in extracurricular activities and dances or those types of activities more than they would if they were not
Correct.
with another school, correct?
Yes. And at the moment, there are school districts that allow for a student to be a part of multiple districts. We don't allow that. PA does not allow that. But there are times when a student might want to be online and take 2 classes there. And it gets really difficult to take account for all of that and make sure everything is accurate. But it's not necessarily something that we can't do. It's just we haven't done that before.
Yeah.
So
Well, I believe we're using pretty offering using the same curriculum, online curriculum as Seaview Academy, which is a
Yep.
Port Angeles school anyway. I think they're
They are.
essentially the same, both elementary and, yeah.
And the uniqueness about it is that, you know, you can come in once a week and have a face-to-face. I know that there's plenty of opportunity to offer tutoring, and we've got some amazing teachers in DVS that are willing to have students come into the classroom at any time during the day. And so I
Great.
think it's, you know, really just needs to be promoted. And
Yeah.
I feel like we can bring some of them back.
Great. Okay,
So,
thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, how successful are you in interviewing students and families coming in or leaving to find out why?
I don't interview anybody, but I know that there is an interview process when a student would like to come to DVS. And part of it is, you know, it's a lot of times students are not successful in the classroom. And that's why we have an alternative opportunity for them through DVS. But they think, oh, this is going to be so much better. And I know Ned is excellent. Ned and Leanne will have an interview with them and just make sure that they understand the difference between an online school and, you know, being in the classroom. And I think that is extremely helpful to help them just to understand. And some go into into DVS and it doesn't work out, and they're not disciplined, or it just doesn't work for the family. So it's a trial and error to some extent. But the interview process of leaving is not, you know, I don't typically interview a family, or it's not bad to say, hey, can I, you know, ask why you're leaving? And anytime I ever talk to a parent, I always address the issue. And because I have people calling me a lot, and they're unaware that they can be homeschooled sometimes and take 3 classes at the school, you know, or they can do DVS. And this is the one thing that I like to present to parents is you pay your tax money for us to provide education to your children if you live in our district. You know, you should take advantage of that. And let's say you want to homeschool, but let us provide the curriculum for you. And that's one way that I try to let them know, because homeschooling is expensive, that they can use our curriculum and do the work at home. So there are conversations around why people leave and why they don't, but it's good to be to interview them. So it might be nice just to randomly call, you know, families and just ask why they're choosing to go.
Yeah, it'd be great to have something like an exit interview, you
It
know, as
would
part
be.
of the process.
Yeah, that would be great.
Anything else?
entrance interview for the people who are coming this direction.
Yeah.
Why they chose swim.
And they do, unless it's an elementary, you know, they'll, especially with DVS, because it's an OPA. Those are the 2 schools that we have a lot of choices in from as well. So they'll ask the questions and just try to make sure that those families understand what is really happening and what the process is. So
Okay,
Thank
all right. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to our HR report. Hello, hello.
Thank you, President Pickens. Good evening, directors, Superintendent Nichols. Thank you for allowing me to present to you our annual report for human resources. Okay. As we begin, I always like to start with our purpose and remind you who we are and what it is that we stand for. The Human Resources Office of Swim School District exists to support the goals and challenges of Swim School District by providing services that promote a work environment characterized by fair treatment of staff, open communications, personal accountability, trust, and mutual respect. So the first section of our report this evening is dedicated to presenting to you the statistics surrounding the ebb and flow of our talent. We believe that the key to providing innovative learning environments is building a workforce with diversity of thought and an array of skills from a variety of backgrounds. That is something we keep in mind as we're moving through our hiring process. How do we build out a team that's going to create the culture that we want here in the Sequim School District? So this report is about the 23-24 school year, but I always like to bring this particular graphic forward at the beginning of the year anyway. It shows our hiring practices for this school year as opposed to last school year. In a vacuum, this doesn't really tell us a lot without looking at, well, how many separations were there? How does this compare with the years prior? That sort of thing. We'll get into that, but I always find it interesting. We definitely hired fewer people this fall than we did the previous fall. So this is our big picture. And this is our big picture bigger. So you can it's still a little hard to read. This, I'm going to dive into some of these a little bit more in later slides, but this chart outlines our hiring and our separations across groups over the past 5 years. We will get into the differences between classified and certificated hires and separations in the next few slides. I'm looking at this. What I see is that in 2022-23, we hired a lot of substitutes. That's what that slide looks like to me. That's the line that stands out. Also, at a glance, I think this slide shows us that there's definitely more movement in and out of our classified staff, which is not surprising. It's not unusual. So this is just our certificated hires over the past 5 years. I'm going to move through this one and the next slide, our separations, because what I find more interesting is when I compare the two, when I look at certificated hires versus separations. You can see that we definitely have had more certificated separations than hires, and this is really not a surprise. The 2021 school year was our most significant COVID year, and then the last 2 years shows that we're working to keep our staff at a sustainable level. So the years where we definitely hired even fewer, had more separations than hires, there were reasons for that. Same with our classified staff. These are our hires over the past 5 years. These are our separations over the past 5 years. And when you look at them together, we have a net increase of 3 classified positions over the last 5 years. So it's pretty stable, even though from year to year it varies. Overall, we're remaining pretty stable with our classified employees. Any questions about these slides? Okay. So this is my favorite part. We talk about our people. I'll start with talking about our substitutes. We are so grateful for them. We need them every day for school to happen. And if it weren't for them, we couldn't make school happen. So we want to take a look at just how much we rely upon them. We have a need for substitutes, and we have a need for them to be ready to fill our jobs. Expanding this chart a little bit, we are very proud of our daily fill rate. So a fill rate of 80% is considered average. That's on a frontline report that tells us 80% is considered an average fill rate for teachers and paraeducators. We're above average, ranging from 84% to 98%. Jobs that go unfilled are either filled by teachers who give up their planning period if it's a certificated vacancy or a certificated absence. If it's a classified absence, it may go unfilled for the day, and colleagues have to join together to help support our students in that capacity. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that the average absence rate in 2022, the last year that this data was available for educators, is 4.2%. So with that, I do want to say that there are many factors that inform absences.
when we work on this chart, we do try to pull out absences that are things like long-term leave for maternity leave or long-term medical. Those are exceptional circumstances, not our day-to-day absences. We don't want to count that in this metric. So also COVID has shifted the way that we view the sniffles at work. So people probably are a little bit more sensitive about not coming to work if they're not feeling great. And I also want to remind you, our employees do have access to leave time, and it is their right to use it. So while our absence rate is a little higher than average, and hopefully you can see before COVID, we were right in the pocket. So hopefully our trends will get a little bit better in that regard. But here's where we stand right now. Thank goodness we have excellent substitutes. That's all I have to say. Any questions? Okay. So 8 folks last year decided to retire. And I just wanted to bring their faces before you again to say we are so grateful for the service that they provided us. Collectively, 208 years of service represented in those 8 folks. So we are so grateful for all of their time and their talent and their dedication to the Sequim School District over the years. So that happened last year. Okay, at the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned that the key to providing innovative learning environments is building a workforce with diversity of thought, array of skills from a variety of backgrounds. That is what we seek to achieve with our affirmative action plan. I'm bringing this to you in this annual report because our board policy 5010 requires reporting to the board annually regarding the progress we are making towards our affirmative action plan. So I'm going to walk you through that a little bit. Before I dive into some of the statistics, I want to bring back some context about the 80% rule. And the question that we ask when we look at this rule is, does our workforce appropriately reflect the community in which we live? Do our students see themselves reflected in their educators? So the 80% rule is a little bit hard for me to unpack so that it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to do the best I can. It's a way to check if a certain group like women or minorities is underrepresented in a specific job group, like administrators, teachers, maintenance, paraeducators. And under this rule, if the percentage of women or minorities hired is less than 80% of the percentage available for that job, then underutilization exists, meaning the organization isn't employing enough people from that group. However, if it's 80% or higher, then we are considered to have had adequate representation of that group. The same rule is applied separately for women and minority across different job groups. The other thing, before I bring up our slides with our statistics, I want to point out that SWIM is uniquely situated. What unique factors present themselves when reaching our goals as they pertain to increasing the diversity of our workforce? Well, the 2020 census data, the data that we are currently using to assess whether or not we're meeting our goals, is meeting our 80% goals. We have to use data from regions that are outside of SWIM. SWIM is too small of a region to provide the report that we need to determine whether or not we're meeting our 80% goal. So we have to look at Kitsap, Snohomish, the state of Washington in general, which is actually more diverse than SWIM. The city of SWIM has, you can see, 55.3% female, 7.1% minority residents. We list Clallam County, the breakdown, but when we look at our workforce, we are representing our city, but we may not meet the 80% rule as based upon the data that we have to use to determine whether or not we're meeting our 80% rule. Does that make sense? Do I need to?
Well,
Perhaps.
is this a rule that we have adopted, or is this a rule that is this a rule that like OSPI is adopted?
It's the affirmative action rule.
For the state?
the
Yeah.
state,
Yeah.
not the federal government.
I believe it's both.
Okay.
So we're at a little bit of a disadvantage because the data that I need, the table that I need to use to pull that data down isn't done for SQUIM.
Well,
It's done for other regions.
It looks to me from that number that we are adequately representing the.
I
area.
believe that we are,
Right.
I believe that we are, but I don't have, you'll see on the next slide, it appears that we are missing the mark in some areas because of the data that we need to use.
Like the whole state data.
Mhm, mhm. So, for example, when we analyze the utilization of statistics for females, we meet the rule except for our maintenance and trades. We have 4 gentlemen who are our maintenance and trades people. We don't have any women in that capacity. So we don't meet our goals in that area. And then when we look at the statistics for minorities, we are falling short in some areas. Again, we are very conscientious to make sure that when we recruit far and wide. We make sure our job descriptions are based upon essential functions of the job. Our hiring supervisors are trained in recognizing or understanding that there's implicit bias to deal with. But we also need to hire from the folks who actually apply for the jobs.
Can you go back to that slide for a moment?
Mhm.
So when it's talking about expected utilization,
Yes.
that's the metric that we're getting, that statewide metric, not
Yes.
necessarily reflective of our
Yes.
area. Is that right?
Yes, so I'm pulling out, we have a copy of our affirmative action report on our website. I pulled it out to refresh my memory so I could remember what it is, where the data came from. And there, the Census Bureau puts together a report called Occupation by Sex and Race, Ethnicity for Residence Geography. And that is the report that I have to go to determine whether or not we are meeting our 80% rule. And the census does not do this report for SQUIM.
Okay.
Or Clallam County, I should say. It does, I have Kitsap County I could look at. I have Snohomish County I could look at. It's Washington State. I mean, I could hand pick. I looked at some other sample reports that other districts in our area have done, and that seems to be the standard counties to look at. But it isn't exactly representative of our own county. We
Okay.
just do the best we can.
And with districts the size of ours, when we have the breakdown based on job category, is there a I guess it sounds like there's not really a minimum threshold either, like when we talk about a department of 4 individuals. I think sometimes
Right.
I think, well, can be challenging when you're talking about such a
Yes.
small department, right?
It can be.
But
One of
there's,
them would need to decide to retire.
Yeah,
And
and-
would have to have an exceptionally qualified female,
right,
you know.
yeah, okay.
So is there a penalty for us if we don't meet our expected utilization?
I think we just need to make sure that we're aware. I have not heard of a penalty. I guess there probably is if we are grossly being, if we are setting up false barriers towards employment, we are not actively promoting our jobs far and wide, that would be a problem.
But if you're doing those things.
But
then-
we are not
Yeah.
doing that.
And
We are,
do you keep statistics on like who applied for various jobs? So you can say,
well, here's the interesting thing. We don't ask race,
Right.
gender
Right.
type
I
questions.
guess that's true, yeah.
During the application process. We don't ask those questions until after they've been offered the job and have been hired. So.
Well, that's kind of a catch-22,
It
huh?
Yeah, I'm just putting it out there. That's what we're looking at
Okay.
because we obviously don't want to be hiring based upon those kinds of things. We're wanting to hire based upon.
But you are expected to hire on the basis of those kinds of things. So that, I mean, from what you're telling us, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
although I think, in my personal opinion,
Mhm.
the spirit of this is to make sure that we are doing right by people. You know,
Sure. And that
so-
you're getting the
Mhm.
word out about jobs so that people have the opportunity to apply for them. And that makes sense.
Yeah, and that we're just not setting up unnecessary barriers to our
Sure.
employment.
Right, we don't work under a quota system.
Right.
Or
Mhm.
anything like
Mhm.
that. I think this is about the reduction of barriers so that, and people feel that the work environment would be supportive
Sure.
to them. So I think us building from that side is the most important because you want the best qualified candidate to receive the job.
So as I said, it's more of a guidance. It's so that we can look at this and say, hey, are we missing something here? Are we not reaching out to the
Mhm.
right
Yeah.
people? It's just more for internal information to make sure we're not missing something, correct? That's kind of a layman's understanding of it.
Well, I think we do have to report it,
Right.
but it certainly is informative for us.
Yeah, and if there could be possibly barriers and that we're not even aware of, or the hiring practice isn't aware of, that, I think that bringing that awareness for us to kind of review our own practices to see, are there aspects that are causing a hindrance or not? Either in the application process or how we're posting those jobs.
Right.
And regardless of all that, there's other barriers as well that I think affect this, when particularly there are job categories up there that require advanced degrees. And there's some broader obstacles there, based on folks that, of course, we hope to rectify, I'm sure, as a society overall, so it is more balanced, but there are some challenges there too. So,
And I would imagine as HR that you have sort of a list of, the steps you take each hiring process to make sure that you're addressing it, like advertising widely and
Yes.
job descriptions, et cetera.
That is correct. And it's very important that we handle each recruitment very systematically. It's the same across the
Right.
board. We're looking for qualified, we're looking for minimum qualifications. We're not looking to promote our friends and family. We're looking to hire the best candidates possible for each job. So we try to go through a very systematic, well, we don't try, we do go through an extremely systematic process each time. We repeat the same thing every time.
Goes the system. Yeah.
It's a system, yes,
You're reporting to us, the board.
correct.
Who else do you need to report this information to?
This, I'm not reporting to anybody but you. However, every couple of years, we are selected. I have to fill out a EEO-5 report where I report to the state, just our demographic makeup.
Selected, it's random. You don't know if we're gonna be selected, or is it every 2 years?
I am not sure. I just know that every once in a while, oh, this is the year I've got to do it. It shows up in my inbox. So that's how I know it's time to do it. Okay. Any other questions about this? Okay, so now we're on to the stars of the show. Each annual report, we like to bring forward a group of employees who make the magic happen every day. And this year, we want to bring forward our paraeducators. These are the dedicated folks who come alongside our most exceptional students and give them extra support that they need to thrive. This evening, we have the privilege of hearing from a few of these folks in their own words.
Our educator in the restorative center, watching a kid who struggles with being disrupted in class, figure out that if they just stay in their own lane and do their thing, that they don't crash into other people. And getting that knowledge of like how we drive on the road, that we have to trust each other to not crash into us and as they crash into them, and have the kid go, finally sort of get it, is the best part of this job. Next best thing is probably just building those relationships with the kids and then getting to see them grow through just a simple thing like being able to think ahead, to see them actually start maturing in their decision making and thinking ahead about how it's gonna make someone else's life easier. If it's not just all about me, that I can put myself off while I'm waiting, or I can put somebody else forward, let them go first.
I think I have the best job. I work in special education with kids who are in gen ed classrooms. My primary responsibility is a small group of kids, but I work with special ed certified teachers in helping kids catch up, helping kids connect to learning targets in unique ways that they otherwise wouldn't have access to if they were treated like every other kid in the classroom. One kid in particular, for example, is currently working with software that during our college fair a couple of weeks ago, several of the representatives from the universities were extremely impressed with the caliber of software that we were using. And I work with a student who has autism. He is highly skilled, but he doesn't express himself in the typical ways. But we have found that he has a unique skill and loves the world that he has access to now that he wouldn't normally have in a typical school setting.
The first thing that I like about my job is the variety. I get to wave good morning and good afternoon to the bus drivers as I flag them into the parking lot. So I enjoy that. The other thing I like about my work that I do here is I get to come to work. I enjoy what I do because then I get to work one-on-one or in small groups with the kids. And I like to be able to give them like shortcuts that work. That's what I tell the kids my job is to make math easy for them. I like the variety of students that I see and a couple of stories, success stories that I've seen that have been eye-opening. One of the second grade students was one of these very active students, and it was really hard for her to sit down long enough to do the sprints. She had the wherewithal, but she couldn't sit still long enough to write the answers in. So I knew that I had heard about some brain research that the brain, if the body is moving, the brain is more active. So I would time her on her math facts, but she could be walking up and down the hall with me. She could just be moving from side to side. She could spit out those math facts orally. She was more successful. So that brain research I saw in reality works. So that was an eye opener, and I just really felt good about being able to help this child be successful.
Another role our paraeducators hold is at the heart of student safety every day. With the dedication and care, they guide students on and off campus, service crossing guards, keep an eye on our parking lots, and support students at bus drop-off and pickup. The Swim School District is truly fortunate to have a dedicated team that goes above and beyond to enrich our students' educational journey. Thank you to our incredible paraeducators for the impact you make each day.
Our educate.
So these folks are truly golden. And they do what they do because they have a passion to see our students thrive. And the themes that I heard from each one of them, student success, inherent rewards, they all believe that their work is meaningful. And I can't think of people I'd rather work alongside than people who feel this way about their jobs. They are truly remarkable folks. And I'm so happy a couple of them got to share with you why they do what they do and how much they love it tonight. Speaking of remarkable people, this is my team, my HR team, Valerie Neefer and John Fitzhugh. They're also remarkable, talented, and highly competent folks. I'm happy to work with them. And that is the end of our report.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, keep us moving right along. I think we have one more report, and that's our facilities report, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome.
Hello. Well, good evening, Superintendent, School Board, Student Board members. I'm Mike Sanis, Director of Facilities, Operations, and Security. Welcome to the Capital Levy and Facility Updates for the Swim School Board for November. First slide, please. Yeah, there we go. First thing you'll notice about this slide is we've been showing this to you over a period of months, is that there's a lot more green on the slide now than there is orange. So there's 4 orange items on this slide. The first 3 I'll go into more depth here in a moment. The 4th one down there is roofing projects. We've kept that open and orange, even though we don't have any active roofing projects currently, because after we re-baseline what levy dollars we have currently after the October distribution, we're going to make some decisions on what revenue is coming, what revenue we project to gather next spring, and then the final distribution in 25. So this is the strategic pause that we talked about some months back. So what we're doing is we're closing projects. We'll get into that a little later with Mr. Marfori and Winaha. So you'll see that a significant amount of projects will be closed tonight, and I'll elaborate on the first 3 orange items. Next slide, please. So capital levy projects, high school HVAC, happy to report that 2 HRUs were installed. Actually, 3 HRUs were installed on the E building over the last couple of weeks. We got 2 more units that are sitting in the cage outside, as you probably noticed. The last 2 barred units, and what barred units are, just to remind everybody, are the HVAC units that we hang on the end of portables. The last 2 of those were hung on P2 and P6, the high school, last Thursday. The high school building management system is now 90% complete as far as being wired to all the new equipment that we installed across the high school. The exterior lighting and hot water heaters are being integrated now. So you'll notice when you come to our campus, our high school campus, that our exterior lights are on during the day. They're on during the day for reasons of calibration, so we can find where they're being controlled from. We're taking them off of what I affectionately call HAL and transferring them over to our Honeywell system. So we have to have them on during that period of time. Eventually, they're going to go off during the day and they'll be on in the evening for a couple, 2-3 weeks out there. And at the same time, we're integrating the larger hot water heaters and recirc systems that we have. Capital projects in progress, gym door replacements and ADA improvements. I'm happy to report that our gym floor contractor, who's responsible for the ADA ramps, we actually have the ADA ramps now, and we're starting to do the coordination between the door supplier and installer and the ADA ramp installer. So I'm happy to report that we're less than 5 punch list items away from finally closing that project as well. Capital projects on the horizon. We all know the CTE building grant letter has been received. Our CMPM RFQ language has been drafted. That's been submitted to the superintendent and her staff. Formal right-sized PM process is being developed by the district, mostly yours truly. I'll have that ready for presentation to the superintendent and possibly the board here in short order. And then stakeholder subcommittee meetings are anticipated to start in November. And in fact, I received a ping this afternoon from Tracy to pick a date mid-month. Next slide, please. This next slide's my favorite slide personally. It's so I can talk about all the wonderful things the facilities and operations group do. We're now in the second year of a formal PM program, PM being preventive maintenance. All right. Some of the outcomes and outputs from that: on-time filter changes and inspections on air handling units district-wide have reduced cold calls by 90% as of the 1st of November. All right. No portable heaters have been procured this year, not one, versus the dozens of heaters that were procured in 23. So it's a great number. We're still troubleshooting. We still got some bugs to work out. It's not perfect by any means, but 90% of 65 plus units, never mind the exhaust, is a pretty good metric for as fast as we moved, commencing right at the end of school. Review, trial, and qualification of a traditional computerized maintenance management system, otherwise known to me, acronym SOUP, CMMS, is currently underway. We're running that evaluation internally next door. Myself, the coordinator, some of my other mechanic colleagues, just kind of running it by. What do you think of this feature? What do you think of that feature? We haven't gotten into cost yet, but we wouldn't be chasing this particular vendor if we didn't think we could afford it. RMCM, which is reactive maintenance, corrective maintenance, work orders district-wide had been reduced by 46% in aggregate over a rolling 12-month period, with locks and keyways continuing to dominate the reactive corrective work order type. I'm here to tell you that a 46% reduction in unplanned maintenance overall in a 13-month period is an amazing accomplishment for the facilities group. All right. And that is a testament to the hard work of our custodians, our mechanics, our facility personnel at large. Of course, my coordinator, my colleague, Bo, over there quietly in the corner, who of course works with us every day. So it's an amazing accomplishment, truly. The MX backlog, otherwise known as the maintenance backlog, mostly assigned to me because it's a parking lot. Backlogs are backlogs. It's mostly assigned to me because they're either on hold because there are projects approaching that will resolve that backlog item, or it's on hold because it's an item that we didn't budget for, that we have to find budgeting for, or we have to find a vendor for. So we don't know if the vendor is going to be so big that we have to compete it on the street, or if it's under the threshold that we can write the purchase order for, but nevertheless, it's in the backlog because it's a big number. That's been reduced by 72% in 14 months, and that's mostly through levy project activity, as I mentioned. So that's a great number. We've got probably a dozen backlog work orders currently sitting for now. A couple of those, for example, is we've got some work on what we call pole number 7 in the stadium. We're going to cut it in half, take the wind load down. Okay. That's one of the items that is currently on the list, just for an example. Waiting for the money to show up, waiting for the rebaselining to occur, and we'll get after that. Just want to let you know the snow removal and ice treatment equipment and materials are ready to go. So the plows are mounted. We bought the sand. We PM'd the sand spreader. We've got our orders and our deliveries of ice melt commencing tomorrow. We'll distribute that district-wide, and we're confident that we're ready to deal with the first storm whenever that might come. So we're a little more proactive this year than we were last year. Admittedly, the first snowstorm kind of hit me broadside here. I wasn't expecting it that early in the year, even though I'm from Denver. I just didn't
You thought that
quite
was a thing
expect
of
it
the
when it did.
past, maybe.
Yeah, it's quite possible. Yes, but thanks. Anyway, we're ready to go when Mother Nature is. Thanks for your attention. Are there any questions?
I'll just say that I really appreciate the preventive rather than deferred maintenance. So much appreciated.
Yes, it's not that we don't have deferred, and that's the backlog that I referred to. Fact of the matter is, and I don't want to build false expectations. Fact of the matter is, we still oversee and maintaining real properties in this district that are 60 plus years old. We're going to continue to see deferred maintenance rise over the short to medium term for sure. Of course, we've got our fingers crossed that our principals in the back get a new facility and we're able to start that planning process in earnest. Questions?
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
Thank
time. I'll return when Mr. Marfori comes back, but thank you.
Okay. Okay, we're going next to our superintendent report.
Okay. Well, I would like to start by talking about the community info sessions that we have been out and about participating in. And I'd like to thank Mr. Sanos because he's been accompanying me as he can, his schedule allows, along with other team members. So it's much appreciated. It's a team effort all the way. So what I'd say to you is that in the past couple of weeks, we were out at Sunland. We went to the VFW, the Realtors Association, for example. We're getting unique questions from each of these groups, and that really does help us to come back with the appropriate information so we can be proactive in our presentations going forward. So we continue to work with that. I will say that questions are coming up about tax rates, fixed income situations, how we are looking forward to enrollment in the future, discussing the birth rate effects that we'll probably see across our region, state, and nation. But it's wonderful to have folks come out who don't necessarily have touch with the school each week. At the Realtors Association, they were very appreciative of our response in coming up with the different proposals from the Long Range Facilities Planning Group because they are hearing these calls for improved facilities in all of their different job-related interactions. I'd also like to share with you some aspects of some other community events. I know several of us were there at the SQUIM Education Foundation fundraiser. I just would like to say that that event was spectacular. The item on our agenda to celebrate guests was related to our culinary program at SQUIM High School. They made the desserts and we had quite a variety there, and it was very nice touch and very well done. So I wanted you to be able to meet these students and celebrate them. They did a fantastic job. I'd like to let you know that we also were represented at the Chamber of Commerce lunch and were able to take a few minutes to talk about our survey and to share that we did want people to take that. So that was great. Also, the Haller Foundation Awards were given out at the Port Angeles District Office. So we went over there and helped to give those awards out, and just amazing community supports in all of our regional areas. So that's wonderful. We also did, as you heard earlier tonight, we sent our 5th grade to Nature Bridge, and Becky Stanton's with us, principal, who went there. Anything you'd like to comment on about Nature Bridge and your visit?
Everybody got on a canoe this year. It's really hard to keep about 15 kids and a couple of adults. And Lincoln, you can totally attest to this because Lincoln was at outdoor school with us too. But just getting them to all paddle at the same time. And the other piece that I was able to share with Karen on the second day, I said, you know, your student was sitting right behind me in the canoe and they were so nervous about even getting on the canoe. And the mom said, you know, I've never not been on a field trip with him, and he did it himself the whole this time. She was so happy that he had that experience, and what a good age for them to have that experience as a 5th grader, right? Getting ready to transition into middle school next, and being able to take a few more risks. and get out of their comfort zone a little bit. I think that's what Nature is all about. We also had a really good time in the, what is it called? I think it's the erosion room where they build, they just build this little city and then they turn on some water and they kind of erode the little city. But just really important to students, what erosion is and the removal of dams have impacted a lot of things. So they learned a lot there. I can't tell you all the things, but those are some highlights.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the themes that I wanted to speak about tonight is community input, and we've had many ways that we are thinking about that. And one of the aspects for the input, of course, was our long-range facilities planning survey. We had over 680 responses to that survey, so that's fantastic. We also are moving out on a new effort with family and parent engagement, and I'd like to ask Donna Hudson to come up and speak about that with you.
Well, so we have tried really to focus through our office on parent engagement, just reaching out and really trying to help our buildings identify what the needs of communities are. So we sent out one parent survey last year. We had 18 responses. And so I came with a newer, a better approach this year. So we sent our first survey out in October, had 307 responses. So we're very thrilled with that response level. We also are really trying to find out how do we communicate and how do parents want to communicate with us? So we ask questions about language. Are you reading information from us in a language that you're comfortable with? Do you prefer email? Do you prefer text? Do you prefer phone calls? Do you prefer written letters sent to you? Or do you prefer in person? So the majority of our families prefer two. One is email and two is text. And text is really growing. It's changing the way that we communicate, and families want to communicate with us. We ask questions about conferencing because conferences were coming up. Do you know that we're having conferences? Do you plan to come? If not, what are some barriers that you have to conferences? One of the points that we found received feedback on is that it's hard for middle and high school parents to drop in to conferences. People work. They like much more the elementary focus of having an appointment that they know this 10 minutes is mine and I can count on it. So really the hope that we will, the plan, I guess, for the survey information is we'll receive it. I will share it with our administrators in administrator meetings, and then I meet with each administrator every week. And so we'll talk generally about it in the admin meeting, and then I'll take information for particular buildings out to particular buildings and give the principals a chance to respond to it and then help plan what they'll do in their buildings, kind of change the way they do things. We standardly, I think, have curriculum nights in our buildings. We have family fun nights around Christmas, a science night, a math night. The number one request of parents for what would you like parent events to be was behavior, help with behaviors at my home. How do I manage behaviors at my home with students? Second was, can you do some classes on technology to help me know how to access what I need to access for my kids? And then the third was curriculum. So those are just two really epiphany kinds of things. Like, this is good information. I'm not sure that we're surprised by it, but having it quantified is really nice. And that then allows us to go out to buildings. And so what we should be seeing in building parent nights, our building should probably be bringing in a discipline. Somebody talk about brain science or talk about just in any number of ways that we can set up boundaries and kind of acceptable skills at home for families to help get a strategy for the home for students and behaviors and just really working to develop that partnership. So we can give a lot of information to families at Parent Nights, but the goal is to give parents information they want
to receive at family night. So we're excited about it. Kathy Borm's been heading this up for us, and she's doing a great job. OSPI has 7 different family surveys, and so we'll be receiving those, looking at them, and then adding ones to our own where we have interest over time. So again, we're excited about it. So one of the goals that Superintendent Nichols has set, and so we're trying to fulfill that, and we're fairly excited with our first foray into it.
Okay, and one of the priorities in this series of 7 surveys that will go out for family engagement is that we respond to the input by having it influence what happens next. And you could hear tonight that we have already known that we can get the influence around how we may schedule conferences or how we may offer the family nights. So we'll continue to do that. Now I'd like to share another theme, and that is about revenue.
Before we go, I have one question
Okay.
on this last one.
Mhm.
If maybe we could share just maybe a tidbit or something, how we went from 18 to 307.
Yeah.
You said we made some changes. That seems like there was a lot in the middle. Like
Yeah.
what made, was there, was it one thing? Was it multiple things?
I think it was
That's a big difference.
the last time we did it, we sent it out through our messenger system as an email. This time we put it into our newsletters. We had QR codes that we put around our campuses, and then all of those, all of those things. And then we had QR codes at the buildings during conferences, so people could just pop the QR code and then take the survey. Also, I forgot to mention, the last question we added to this survey was, have you taken our long-range facilities survey? And so of the 308 people, almost 50% had not. So we embedded the link there. And so what we're trying to do is just be smart about making sure that our communication supports other communication. And if you know anything about family engagement, that's hard to do at the district level. It's easier to do at the building level. So our principals have really stepped up, got that into their newsletters. We're trying to actively seek out information, not just send it and hope that we get stuff back, but really try and get it out. So that would be the answer I'd have there.
Well, bravo. Good
Yeah,
job.
no, we're excited.
Thank you.
I'm not leaving. I'm gonna, no,
Yeah,
I am
Sorry.
leaving.
Anything else?
Got out of the first time awfully quick.
Okay, thanks. So revenue. I just would like you to know a few things about our pursuit of grants, and also the information that I am learning and bringing back regarding timber. So as far as our grants go, we have a College Success Foundation grant that's come in that will be assisting at the high school level. It is engaging work so that we can have more students understand pathways into college, be planning for that, have additional help. Our school counselor team is very strong and seasoned and amazing, but this will be an additional help through a grant, just to be looking especially at folks who may not traditionally have had a path that was as clear to secondary education. So we're working on that. Our outdoor education grant was just utilized by the 5th grade to go to Nature Bridge. So that was a real success. We have SmartPass implementation at the middle school that is underway. SmartPass is a system that works inside classrooms throughout the school so that teachers can have students enter if they're going to be headed out for, say, a restroom break. It monitors throughout the whole school how many folks you have out. It's keeping an eye on making sure we don't have too many students landing in the same place at the same time. It's having teachers very much aware if somebody has been gone for a while. So it is a real effort that our schools at secondary level are making to try to reduce some of the behaviors that we've known needed to be addressed. This is being supported through Jewel settlement funds.
Great.
Okay, yeah. We have received word that our tennis court grant through the Community Outdoor Athletic Facilities Fund has gone into a status to be considered for alternate funding. Only 2 projects were funded in our entire Western region. There were over 27. So I'm really pleased that we are in alternate status because it wasn't a no. And our scoring did improve with the final draft. So that was good news. And a thanks, of course, Director Sanos and also the Peninsula Tennis Club. They put in so much time. We did unfortunately receive a no on the COPS grant for security and surveillance equipment. What we learned from that is that it was a federal level grant, and they said that the asks just completely exceeded the funding that was available. But I think many large school, urban sized districts received funding. With a community outdoor facilities grant for the tennis courts, it's all around your scoring. And our scoring is a challenge in SQUIM because the demographics of our community are not as severe as they are in some others. So we'll continue to work with that. So I just wanted you to have that feedback. But in addition with revenue, I want to talk to you about the Revenue Advisory Committee. I do sit on this committee for the county, and it looks at funds that do come in as revenue streams, timber being one. So I'm going to pass these out to you. And we'll look at these. We also have this up on the screen. This sheet is designed to put in perspective what our Clallam County lands actually have as designations. And why I'd say this is important to recognize is just simply for us to have perspective about what lands are even available to provide revenue to junior taxing districts. Okay, if you look at federal land, Olympic National Park and Olympic National Forest have 46% of the acreage in Clallam County. It's quite considerable. When you come down to the state land and look at the county forest board land, that's the land available for the Revenue Advisory Committee to really be discussing, anticipating potential revenue only if the area within that 8% is up for lumbering. And of course, there are 2 sales that we are watching here in SQUIM. It's Pistol Pete and it is power station sales. Although those sales can happen, the length of time you wait for gaining the revenue is quite considerable. But I do appreciate being included on the Revenue Advisory Committee because it is at times, if you have a regional sale for which your junior taxing district is eligible, it can be some influx of funds that are very useful. So I would say to you that we'll keep our eye on that. We'll be budgeting potential timber money with a conservative eye, because although something gets sold, you have to wait for the timeline. Before something gets sold, there are sales that are contested. And when that happens, it delays decision making, and it's not always something that we should anticipate as a guarantee, of course. But I will also report to you that right now there are a couple of sales. Pistol Pete, for instance, SQUIM School District could anticipate revenue at a level that's, let me see here. Power Station is $159,000 for one angle and $79,000 for another. That's very helpful for projects that need to get done and making sure that we have one-time costs that we could consider for those. So I just wanted you to bring you up to speed about that.
Are there certain categorical things that can that revenue be used for, or is it completely open?
We have tremendous flexibility with the money that we're receiving from these sales. There is money that is designated through state trust lands that comes for different reasons, but for these two power sales, it'd be very helpful to us. Okay, all right. So then I'd like to switch and have us just talk about a couple of new things that will be occurring. The Smart Tag Parent app is now available to all of our parents. We did make a push last week to get that out and have people sign up. It's very simple sign up. So we'll continue to work with that and hope that parents take an interest. The functionality of that app, we will start to introduce more and more as we go along this year. So we thank people for trying it out. I'd like to thank parents for attendance at parent-teacher conferences. We had good attendance, and we know that partnership is so critical. So we really appreciate the survey input as well, because we want to make these experiences even better. But as Lincoln mentioned, we had Friday as a professional learning day for our employees. And I just wanted you to know some of the things we did on that Friday. We had Science of Reading trainer come in, a trainer from EAB. You've heard much about our commitment there. It was very well received, and that happened at Gray Wolf Elementary. 95% intervention program training happened at Haller for third grade teachers. And then cumulative student management system, because we'll be transitioning from Skyward, that happened across our district for many, many different groups of stakeholders. And we had training that was specific to stakeholder needs. So we will be transitioning to cumulative, most likely in June. We had originally thought we might make the move in February or March, but we've met with the ESD and we're going to push it to the end of the year. So I'll be having a date for you soon. Beyond that, I'd say fall sports playoffs are in swing, and that is certainly exciting for our teams. And we've had tremendous success of teams going into playoffs. So you'll hear more, and we'll have an AD athletic director report in early December. And then I want to just talk about our strategic plan goal of civic and cultural responsibility. Today, had the joy really of attending Gray Wolf's Veterans Assembly. And it was just a tremendous turnout, tremendous honoring of those who have served, and recognition of relatives who had served in the military over time for all of the students and employees. And I just want to thank the Gray Wolf staff for all their work to put that together. And then Nick Bell, who is Watchdogs, that's the father group that comes together. He was part of this as well and had a major part in it. So it was quite exciting. We have Veterans Day assemblies at each of our schools coming up, and I think you received this last board meeting. If you'd like to see it again tonight, I'll pass it around so you know when these are occurring. And then finally, around civic responsibility, vote. Right? We're on the eve. And so that certainly is important, and we'd like to encourage everyone to do so. And that's my report.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? All right. That's going to bring us to our board business. And 10.01, we have an acceptance of completed capital projects. And we're gonna have this agenda item be introduced before we look at making a motion. Sure. Okay.
Is Mr. Marfori with us?
Chris gonna be joining us. Oh, hi, Chris. Welcome.
So I'd like to introduce Chris Marfori, Winaha Corporation, our partners and colleagues in our capital levy project process. He and his team, by the way, have worked quite hard over the last week and a half to gather all of the needed information and check all the boxes with the new procedure that we have in order to close the projects we have in front of you. I'm here for questions. Chris, it's all yours.
All right, I appreciate having me on tonight. And we sent a list of items and projects which we would like to look at for this evening. Tracy had forwarded over the new policy for a closeout procedure for these projects and board acceptance. And we would like to present 6 of them here tonight as well. Oh, sorry, 7 here tonight, as well as just kind of have a discussion of moving forward on those projects. I'll start in the order that they're on the list of the agenda, just how they're sequenced. First project is project number 1044, which was roof patch and walk and patch for the flat roofs on Squim High School roof. That's A, B, C, D, and E. We had what is a 2-year warranty to patch and walk by Tremco completed over the summer, which they actually went and stopped a number of the leaks that are a short-term fix to long-term planning of what to do with roof replacements. As part of what Director Santos mentioned, we're going to have to reevaluate as part of this strategic stop. Now that the form is up on the up on the screen, I want to go ahead and real quick reference what we're planning to do with all of these. Each one of these project numbers are identified in the levy and or given ones as they are allocated. So it's kind of an arbitrary number. So don't be shocked if they jump around a little bit. It's more about allocation time than a necessary sequence. We will, as each package, we will have 3 specific items per the policy to provide to you. One is a letter of building commissioning if it's applicable, acceptance of the architect indicating work is complete for the project, and a certificate of notification whether there are liens or no liens on the project. If this is voted on by the board for approved for each of these items, we will follow up with the remaining items on the policy for the next 60 days. So in regards to this project, the flat roofs, that there is no building commissioning because the roofing doesn't have commissioning, and these are existing installations, so that's not applicable. When it is a scope which is only reviewed by manufacturer's warranty and cross-verified as accepted by district staff, we are identifying here approved by district staff because there's not a designer specifically who's there to give a letter of acceptance. In this instance, this was reviewed and the warranty was presented to the district, to Director Santos, and he had verified any of the punch list items he has identified have been closed. Certificate of liens, the vendor for this, Tremco and KCDA, this was procured through KCDA, has confirmed there are no liens filed on the project. And so we're asking that get approved. The second project is the Squim Middle School fire alarm. This was a emergency project because the fire alarm panel back in May actually failed. And we had to put this together and put it on the street and get it approved in order to maintain occupancy of the school district. This was procured and put on the street in June, awarded in July, and the contractor completed and got a certificate of occupancy by the end of August before the first day of school. It was an amazing timetable, a quick turnaround by this contractor. Letter of building commissioning, we do not have a commissioning on this project. However, we have received building final and acceptance by the fire marshal, as well as certification from the manufacturer that it is upgoing. We have acceptance by the fire department and the the district personnel, and there are no liens. Third project is Squim High School's track resurfacing. Going through each of the pages. Sorry, on the track resurfacing, the building commissioning, obviously track doesn't have commissioning. However, KCDA did verify the work was complete and the track resurfacing punch list was reviewed and approved by Director Santos. And they have confirmed there are no liens on the project. Fourth project is Helen Haller's fire alarm replacement. This is the fire alarm that had to be rescoped and resubmitted. The same company that did the middle school actually got the fire alarm awarded to them in May and completed the project in 25 days, which exceeded all expectations for the project. This was signed off by the fire marshal in June. They have confirmed that this is closed, provided all permit sign-offs. The work has been accepted by the school district, and they have confirmed there are no liens on the project. The fifth project is the replacement of the HVAC at Olympic Peninsula Academy. Now, this one has a slightly different situation, but it is actually something outside of the confines of the project. The building commissioning for the project was verified and the building was balanced. However, one of the items that was found was an existing condition of a couple failed components that is outside of the requirements of the contractor to verify and complete need to be repaired. And so we actually have kept the commissioning agent on retainer to complete the commissioning. Once that's done, we have a secondary service actually going out and fixing those components, but it's outside of the actual scope of work for Olympic Peninsula Academy. The project for the scope of work was verified by the engineer to be complete, and the contractor has provided a confirmation that there are no liens on the project. So we are asking this actually be accepted because everything within the scope of work that was released to the public has actually been completed. And we do not, and this triggers completing the contract for the contractor who is 100% complete with their work. The sixth project is the installation of the boardroom and the second floor offices for the business office. This was originally a ESSER grant project that was managed through the capital projects levy. That work was completed back in May, and it was signed off by everything but the fire alarm in July. And the project has been accepted by the architect, and the work has been completed for the contractor. The building commissioning agent has commissioned all of the HVAC for it and provided an acceptance letter. And the contractor has confirmed there are no liens. The seventh and last contract is the intercom and clocks installation at Helen Haller Elementary School and Squim Middle School. This project was let out in July. The contractor went in, and if this was work that was the infrastructure was installed during the wireless access points last year, and this was implementation of the intercoms and clocks as tied to that project. This work was completed and signed off by Director Young back in September. There is no commissioning for it. The system either works or it doesn't, and the manufacturer and the vendor have confirmed the system is working. And the contractor has confirmed there are no liens on that project. So these are the first 7 projects we're bringing forward on this policy. The intent is to go back on every project that has been completed by the under the capital projects levy and provide a letter and package for those. That is going to take us a little bit of time to do, but we will probably have a few of these projects to catch up on all of those to make sure we're in compliance with the new policy on all of these projects. Any questions?
Questions? I just want to share that I definitely appreciate this going through all of these, because I think it's important that we kind of tie up what's, this is important work, but it's also taxpayer, funded work. And I think it's just important that we, deliver the outcome to the public and make sure that they know we're doing what we said we're going to do. So
The project team agrees that we create an auditable, verifiable, and repeatable process. So we are, as Chris said, we are going to go back and we are going to what we call retro close some of the early projects in the levy. And that'll take some time to gather some of that information because some of it's been idle. Those projects been completed for quite some time. Retainage has been paid in some cases. So we're going to have to put those timelines together and those sequences of events put together. But this is very helpful that the board approves these, because now within the next 60 days, we can formally close these projects on the levy list, pay the retainage, and move into the warranty period.
Well, and it creates a record going forward of what actually happens when the taxpayers vote to give us money to do things, that we actually do the work. It gets done on time, it gets done professionally, and all of the appropriate engineers and architects and people who are involved have reviewed it and So I think I think it's great. And Chris, particularly hearing about a few of these projects that had to get done on fairly short notice. And, you know, everybody knows how challenging it is to get contractors and then to get, when you have a hard deadline, like we've got to be able to open school, and to actually make those kinds of scheduling things work it's very impressive, and I know it's not easy. So thanks to both of you for that. That's I think that's just really says a lot about your professionalism and your sense of urgency, which I think is the thing that sometimes is just necessary to get things done, you know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, I would entertain a motion.
List it by the project number.
I believe we could attempt to do a slate here.
Is there any year or anything attached, or just accept to complete a capital project? Is there a calendar year or something, or certain funds that we need to make in the motion?
I
You're
don't
aware of?
say that we move to approve the completed project documents that have been presented
In the
along with
agenda?
this agenda.
Yeah. Is that a motion?
That is a motion. That is a motion. I move that we approve
So moved.
the project closure documents that have been presented to us with this agenda.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
You did.
It's okay. All right. Care to cast an advisory vote on this one? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Chris.
Thank Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Okay. And moving right along. We have a first reading and approval of policy 2410 graduation requirements. And
This policy was updated based on the WASDA's recommendations. It's making sure that our school district is formally communicating with families about dual credit programs and the fact that they can access financial aid. And I'm very happy to tell you that Sequim High School has regionally the strongest numbers of financial aid applications being submitted. So they're doing a great job.
nice. Okay. So I would entertain a motion to move this to a second reading if one was so inclined.
I move that we move first the policy 2410 graduation requirements to a second reading.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All right, or care to cast an advisory vote on this one?
Sure.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. Perfect. All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, that's going to bring us to a first reading of policy 3241, student discipline.
This policy was recently modified with its recommendations just in late August into September is when we received an alert that OSPI had moved to replace the term discipline with either discretionary discipline or non-discretionary discipline, really outlining the fact that there are going to be parameters continuing around how we can facilitate discipline in schools, and that we are expected to be facilitating it along the lines of maintaining not only just approaches to how we have to be intervening prior to events if possible, but also categorizing discipline. So this policy seeks to make those updates that have been not only recommended, but expected. And our district has been doing a lot of work with discipline response. And last 2 Fridays ago, I went to Port Townsend for what's called a Common Threads meeting. It's a meeting between regional administration representatives and regional WEA representatives, and discipline was our primary presentation. There's just so much to know and to facilitate.
All right. On this particular, I'm not sure if we should do a motion first or not, but I do have some feedback on this particular one, but I'll ask if there's a motion first.
I'll move that we move policy 3241, student discipline, to second reading.
I'll second.
All right. One of the things that I just feedback I wanted to give and potentially for us to consider, and I believe through discussion with Superintendent Nichols, we were talking about sometimes you could do, if it's like minor tweaks or minor adjustments, not necessarily, I don't want to call them minor, but just clear adjustments, it can still be done and then still proceed to the second reading as long as, because we published the agenda in advance, but the idea, the bullets that are in this particular one, right towards the top where it does scroll up. I definitely appreciate the item number, hold on for just a moment. Item number 3, when it talks about administering discipline in ways that respond to the needs and strengths of the students and keep students in the classroom to the maximum extent possible. I definitely appreciate that. I also wouldn't mind seeing something listed in there, even directly below it, that also has some layer of consideration for as it relates to discipline, other students that are in the classroom too, that may potentially be impacted. And sometimes when it talks about the maximum extent possible, I think sometimes and I'm sure that our staff and administrators take this into consideration, not at the expense of the learning experience of other students. And I was just hoping that I could see this captured as well within our discipline policy, because although the last item here certainly talks about providing a safe environment for all students and for district employees, I understand that, but also I consider, the learning experience of all students as well. So that's
I mean, it's not necessarily a safety issue per se. Okay.
Correct. And so I know that it doesn't give us grounds not to follow the discipline laws that are in place and limitations there. But it's still, for me, I would love to see that either, at least the spirit of that still captured in this policy. And wanted to open that aspect up for discussion.
So is that consistent with the language of the statutes and the regs that, I mean, I don't know if this is something that comes straight out of a statute or a reg.
I would say upon that question, it feels like, since this is a disciplinary policy, that it would be maybe more prudent to send it back to the policy committee rather than just make our own changes right here. Let's maybe take our time with it, if there's time for that, rather than just modifying it. I for one think that would maybe be a little more prudent, since it's a disciplinary policy.
Yeah. If the board is in
No,
favor of
it
that,
makes sense.
I'm bringing that particular one up, and but it's not just about me. So if everyone else is fine with it as is, that's appropriate as well.
No,
So,
I think that's, I mean, to me, that's a sensible qualifier to add on that to the maximum extent possible, also weighing the needs of the other students in the classroom. Or I don't know how else you would say that, but
yeah.
But I don't know if there's something required, and maybe this is something we need to look at the policy committee again. If this is statutory language that we need to.
What I shared with Director Pickens is that disruption is really the the target, it sounds like, of the concern, because safety is addressed in this. But remember, the title of this is student discipline. So it's really a policy about what you do with the student who is misbehaving. And so we will have to just discuss how we get a sentiment, a spirit
Yeah.
involved in these bullets, not necessarily a directive, because I do think saying that the consideration for other students in the class, while of course important to manage a class effectively, that's the foundation of management. The title of the policy is about the discipline toward the student who may be having the challenge. So let's look at it, see what we can do.
Yeah, I think overall, most of the language was an improvement, especially I'm sure that teachers would agree with that. For most of it, looks like it gave some more flexibility. But yeah, there was some language, but some of it may be statutory, but maximum extent possible is a pretty harsh language. So, without any exceptions in there. So I think that is something that I would feel comfortable sending back to the policy committee to review.
Okay.
I also think it sort of, one needs to address it as getting in the way of a student's right to learn. And so in some ways, not putting it in there could be in competition with other statutes as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
not just disruption, but just the right to learn.
This is something we had a timing issue on that we needed to move promptly on this, if I recall.
What was this, that one?
Yes, the directive came out at the beginning of September, and we are to be having this policy in effect. However, I will say we have the discipline policy in effect. It's just the modifications. So I feel like taking the time to do it well is important.
So I'd like to make a motion a secondary motion in this case, that we refer this particular policy back to the policy committee, just to consider the additions or that we had during discussion. And hopefully have a second.
I would think that it would also be maybe just to look over all the language, I think, because there are some other areas that have some pretty strict language, I guess would be the way to put it. So maybe if they could just kind of the one we spoke about, but also maybe just a quick review over the language of the rest. Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
This is
I guess I would, as a
To
member
the
of that
point of
committee.
order, I second the motion and now we can have discussion.
oh,
Thank you,
sorry.
Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Doesn't need a second.
I, as a member of the policy committee, I would agree that if if you guys can have time to look at this, and if you have any other thoughts about suggested changes or additions, if you could just email them to Regan and Tracy, and then we can gather that up and all be, and look at it all at the same time.
That I'm concerned, maximum extent possible is somewhat in the eye of the beholder. Either in policy and or in the procedure that needs to be delineated as to what we mean by that. So either adding a few words here and not interfere with the learning of other students or whatever, that kind of language, or in the procedure, say, these are the things we're considering.
So we also have to recognize we are bound by RCWs to make sure that we're facilitating discipline correctly. So we're going to have to evaluate what we can modify and what has already been modified in this policy because language was changed or shifted. Anything you want to add, Donna, to that?
I do.
Well, we can't hear you when.
Just a key point to make when we took training on this, they want to make it very clear that even the child who is disruptive has legal rights. And that's really going to be the sticking point with adding things in.
everybody has rights, but the child who's being disciplined, removed from class or removed from school have rights as well. And this policy protects everybody's rights. So certainly want to look at the language, but understand that we can't just go all the way over here because there are things that legally we have to make sure that we come out, correctly on. So that's all I would add is certainly happy to look at it, but as she said, the policy is based on the law, and we have to make sure that we take a look at the whole picture in setting that policy.
And I would add that it would be my, I would hope that what comes back to us after reviewed again would still hopefully meet. And maybe what comes back to us is like, there's no way to capture that and maybe that is the response that comes back. Hopefully not. Hopefully there's something that would still capture that desire of what we discussed. But yeah, we want to make sure it's got to meet the letter of the law for sure.
I would say the value that you're bringing up is a value that exists in our schools. Our teachers, our administrators are constantly looking out for all of our students and trying to find ways for classrooms to be managed, of course, the most effectively. It's best for everyone. And discipline should be an educational experience first. And one emphasis in this policy is making sure that we have interventions before things get so escalated that you're thinking of a removal. So let us go back and think about what you're sharing there. Think about definitions and how we can move in that direction. And I'm sure we can come back with something that's
okay. All right. Any further discussion on my motion to refer? Care to cast an advisory vote on motion to refer?
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Next, we are going to be doing a first reading and approval of policy 3432, emergencies.
This is one too that need to make them, I don't want to move right away, but to send this back to the policy committee for consideration to remove the wording to the extent that funds are available. And because either to remove it for that whole section or remove it specifically for conducting annual inventory of all hazardous materials and annually review and update the school safety plans.
So do you want to make a motion to refer this?
I move we refer policy, I've lost my 3432 emergencies to consider removing, or should I make it stronger?
Why don't you just refer back to the committee and then we'll talk about it in discussion.
Refer it back to the committee for further study in the possible revisement.
Is there a second on that motion?
I second.
Okay.
My concern on any emergency is if funds are available. If that's true, I would like to, personally, in my grumpy old man mode, then I think that ought to be inserted into every policy we have. If the last one, the discipline policy, if funds are available, will be this. If funds will be available, this is what we're going to do in facilities. If funds are available. So that phrase in general bothers me. And this particular case, even though it says annually, I like dates, but it says annually. In our current policy, it says all those things will be done, but it doesn't say annually. So I do like the annually idea. But I just like to see that, think about that again.
Okay. One thing that I'll add is it is possible, I mean, depending on the extent of the change, it doesn't necessarily have to be referred back to committee for us to just make small changes, but it could. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm just saying there are some options here.
This is a fairly major change, I would think, to the wording, at least that ought to be explored and checked with, I don't know, my experience, an inventory of hazardous materials that's up to date. I would think first responders would want to know. Not did you do it? Do we have it? Yeah, we did it 2 years ago. I'm thinking should be done annually. But that's a
Well,
question.
you'll be happy to know that it has most recently been done.
Right.
Okay, and it did have a price tag to it, and although we did not have a budgeted figure around it, we prioritized it. So I think the value system around what you're speaking to is occurring. Has it been occurring for years and years and years? We are making a lot of progress. Okay, so I honestly want to say that in reviewing this, Director Jeffries had brought this up to me prior. I have considered this. I do feel that removal of those words is something that we could live within that lane. And if you wanted to make that decision tonight, I feel I support it. I don't have an issue with that.
So, that would address the concern about to the extent that funds are available if we made that adjustment.
We'd be making a commitment to the bullets on an annual basis.
Yeah.
And let's just look at them. I'll give you my rationale. Reviewing and updating of the school safety plans with emergency agencies doesn't cost us anything except time, right? And commitment. The inventory of hazardous materials is not actually the cost. It's the getting rid of them. Okay. And once you've done that well, which I know we have, I think we're going to see less of a budget impact around it. Identifying the staff members who are trained on the National Incident Management System and trained, we can identify who's trained. It's the next step that at times costs money, and that is training people. And so training could be a price tag, but this is not calling for us to do that. It's just saying identify and have, what I would say is you'd have a list so that you're constantly working on it. Identify the school transportation procedures for evacuation. We already do that. And we are working on our reunification plan right now in safety committee. It's taking us a while, but we're doing it. And provide information to all staff on emergency supplies and alert procedures. I don't see that as significantly costly unless you hire a trainer to come do it. If you do that through internal means, it can be
Makes you
done.
wonder why that line was in there to begin with.
I find it interesting.
It was put in the model policy. It isn't in our current policy.
Okay.
But our current policy doesn't call for us doing those bulleted things annually. So what I would do then is withdraw my motion.
Assuming we make that change, we delete that.
Well, I would make the
Right.
motion.
Okay.
If I could
Withdraw your old motion.
withdraw my motion.
Motion to.
You never had a second.
Never had a second? Okay.
No, actually, Maren
I think I
seconded.
did.
Oh, okay.
Well, we could vote on it.
We
and
could vote
have
on it
nobody
and
vote.
respectfully.
I could withdraw it with your approval. Is that the way Robert's Rules of Order says?
I have to look at my cards on the withdrawal.
But
of the
let's not
motion.
get,
But we could just,
Vote in
we could
turn.
just vote and you could,
okay.
you could vote no on your own motion and we could all be respectful of it,
I'll let-
knowing what the next motion is gonna be.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not,
It'll
yeah.
hurt, but I'll do it.
We know the spirit of why it's, so,
Mhm.
any further discussion? Care to cast an advisory vote on this one?
I'll understand.
Okay. All right.
Too complicated.
All in favor of referring this back to committee, please say aye. All right. All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Okay. Is
Yeah.
there, that motion does not pass, motion to refer does not pass. Happy to entertain another motion though.
I would move to rewrite that line to simply say the district will do the following annually.
And would you move that on to a second reading with that addition?
And I move that
I'm
we,
suggesting.
and that we move 32,
34, 32
34, 32 to a second reading
with modification.
With that change.
with that change.
Okay, do we have a second
A second.
discussion? Anything?
Well, I like the word conduct, but that's okay. Do the words.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The only other thing I saw is right after that line, I think there was a 2 that was supposed to be due.
That's what he was.
Right, and I read,
Yeah, you got.
my motion got
Okay.
rid of the 2.
Yeah. Okay, just make sure we had that. All right. Advisory vote?
I will so.
Okay, fair enough. All in favor of moving this on to a second reading with the indicated edits suggested, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, and with that, that is going to conclude our board business and
I just wanted to remind folks that Monday is Veterans Day, and so school will be closed. And a
Okay.
thank you to all the veterans out there.
And I just also wanted to say, as Superintendent Nichols also pointed out, although not appropriate on this platform to suggest who one might vote for, I think it is appropriate just to suggest tomorrow, make sure you vote, right? So those that are able to, please vote. It's important. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn.